You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey Jeeples, welcome to the next episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the tech guy, the one who reads instructions, uses the right tools, and follows those instructions.
And I am Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy on a continual mission to nerf poor Kevin when I can. Exactly. He's definitely I'm Pinky, he's the brain. But moving on from that, so while we will share with you what worked for us,
as well as what didn't,
we ask that you take time to read the instructions,
use the right tools, and please
follow
those instructions.
Throw a little curveball. I almost remember what was going on.
It was. But hey, we're freestyling today.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting here. There is rain after rain after. Florida is almost living up to its 90s. 4 o'clock every day, it's going to rain.
Yeah.
And everything that has chlorophyll in its body, including the plastic plant in my office, is exploding and pollinating. And if those of you who don't know, I am not a native Floridian. I am an import. I
can tell by the JDM tattoo.
Yeah, no, not that kind of import, but close enough. And this pollen is just beating the ever-loving you-know-what out of my breathing apparatus.
And the sad thing is, all day today, he hadn't coughed a bit. The minute we sit down and record, he choked. Now I'm doing it. Thanks. See, this is how he gets me back, folks. Hey, so anyways, welcome to show we forgot. I think it's 98. I think this is show 98.
Okay. I'll go with that.
You go with that. While you do that, I'm going to make sure real quickly that this is going to be show 98. So, Kevin, why don't you dazzle them with how things are going on your end of the world?
Well, today was an interesting day. Scott actually wasn't working overtime again, as usual.
Yeah.
And he goes, I actually have Saturday off. You want to hang out and do some of those nitnoidy chores that just you keep putting off.
I was right, by the way, 98.
98, good. I stalled long enough. And so Scott came over this morning, and we did some house stuff, not anything with black mold, thank heavens. And, sad thing is I've had both my OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 training. I've been trained in, up to level D, hazmat and all that kind of stuff like that. And you think I'd know better. But there's just something about, well, it's my house, it's my wall. It's just a concrete block wall, and it was the bottom of a door jamb.
Brace yourself, like we hear in the Jeep community all the time. I know what I'm doing.
Well, I wish I could even say that. It didn't look that bad. I just thought I had a little bit of punk in there, and then I cut open a piece, and as I'm cutting, the sawdust is a little darker than expected, and I should have known that pretty much. And when that piece came out, and I was like, I'm in trouble. Plick, hand me the Clorox spray, and I soaked everything down. But
including his eyes.
I probably got a lungful before that. So, and don't worry, folks. I've seen the doctor, antibiotics, all that good stuff. So yeah. we're in good shape that way.
So, in case you guys want to know about the show, the past why we did what we did, this is kind of leading up to what happened.
Yeah. So I'm going around the bush a little bit. We both had issues simultaneously, almost to the same day.
I came back from a little trip, and
your boss says, "Hey, Scott, I got something to tell you."
Yeah, I'm driving. I'm standing in North Carolina, getting ready to leave. I brought my nephew back, and I get a text message. Hey, just so you know, ex-employee tested positive for COVID. I'm like, oh, great.
The guy that sits in the desk next
sits
to you,
next to me, and I'm like, oh no.
And for me, I had this mold attack, but of course, before anybody would see me, they're like, "Do we know it's mold? How do you know it's mold? Are you a doctor?"
I scraped it off my forehead.
And so, long story short, it was like, okay, how do I deal with this? I need to see a doctor, but I can't see a doctor because... So, Florida, fortunately, thank you, Governor DeSantis, for setting up the testing systems. And I made an appointment, went out and did a in-car...
Brain
probe test, as opposed to the quickie.
As we're calling the reset button.
Yeah. It's a long swab. And, I got to segue away from the Jeep thing for a minute, but I was impressed at these folks out there. I went to the setup center in a little town called Plant City, Florida, and they have it out in the Civic Center parking lot. You have a kind of a chicane car thing where you drive through.
Yeah.
and they have the medical students from UCF coming around. Was it USF?
One of the Fs. One of the FFs.
I think it's USF. And they're running to car, taking all the information, and they're in safety gear, getting your info and that stuff, and you slowly wind through the chicane. And when I say slowly, it was maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most. And you get up, and then the technician comes up, and she was very, very nice, and she said, do you have the symptoms? And I said, well, not anymore. By the time I got the test scheduled, it had been 2 weeks, and I'd been, my symptoms disappeared in 72 hours.
Right.
And she was very kind about it, and she kind of laughed. She says, well, that doesn't exactly sound right, but, good idea getting tested. And because there are people that does happen to them. There's some that are asymptomatic altogether. And she says, all right, well, she goes through the questions and answers and all these things, and she says, all right. And I said, what do you need me to do? And she said, well, just turn towards me, stay in your car, and couldn't roll down the window low enough for her because she was rather short and my Ford truck's a little tall. So I opened the door and she
out the step stool.
She was kind of nice, but she said, okay, now watch me. I know there's been a lot of concern over. She asked me point blank. She says, sir, do you have any concerns or questions? I said, yeah, I do. I have a lot of concerns over the reported high number of false positives and false negatives, and so the accuracy of the test. And she says, and she, when I got done, she's like, those are really good questions. She said, but let me show you what. We're not doing the fast test here. This is the CDC approved, back sinus probe. She says, other ones were doing the upper sinus cavity, and those were ones that were showing a lot of false negatives. So she explained the test to me and gave me a handout that was actually not opinion, but facts. Okay. And then it had underneath some recommendations. Okay, but those were stated as these are not, must-dos, but these are recommendations. And then she's like, all right, so, here, take a look. And she said, we've had a lot of people complain that people signed up for tests and then didn't show, and they got a letter back saying it was positive. She said, I don't know about that being true. But she kind of popped off and said, watch what I'm going to do. I want you to see this because you're going to sign the document. And I said, all right. And she pulls out a brand new test kit, still safety sealed, showed it to me. She broke the seal, removed the test swab, said, lean down, and it was enough to make you want to cough. And, you ever had that tickle in the back of your throat? I now know where that is. She probed all the way back from the nose to the tickle spot.
And now you can't remember the third grade.
Yeah, I don't know that I could anyway, because, God, I'm kind of in that 6th century or 6th decade of life. But anyhow, they were just absolutely fantastic there. So any of you ever have to go through this, if you find yourself needing to know for whatever reason, it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It was not painful. Okay. It didn't take long. And I had my results back that I was not infected with COVID-19 in about 3 days. And it's on file now with the testing lab, which is very nice.
Yeah. Well,
and my doctor will now see me.
now you can get poked and prodded other ways. On the note of that kind of stuff, a big thank you to Ron over at Redscorpion Fabworks. He had some gators made with our logo on it.
Well, he had a bunch of gators made with him, and they had a overrun in numbers, and he asked the printer if they would throw them out. And so we got 5 really neat gators with the On the Trail. And you know what? At first thing, I was like, well, these have been really great to send to our listeners, but we only got 5, and we need them. Yeah. Particularly here in Florida.
Yes. Yeah. And also, too, it's been a crazy week for everyone around here. That's, again, why we did what we did with the show. And, again, a big thank you to Patrick Chase. I was having a rough day with one of my female dogs, and he texted me, or he posted something on Facebook, which was a nice little escape, and we messaged back and forth. So thank you, Patrick. Really appreciate what you did. But let's get on to the meat of the subject, because of course, the week we can't record is the week something big happened. Something big was announced, which was the Ford Bronco. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard about it yet. I mean, if you're on any Jeep page, if you're on any Bronco page, it was previously a Jeep page. Oh my goodness, man! You'd think when as a Gladiator owner, I will say this: it's nice getting some of the heat off me now. But real quickly, though, on the note of the Gladiator, because I do want to segue for a second. We took our first trip to North Carolina with it, and we drove there and back. We averaged about 19 miles to the gallon, which is
See, I told you it wasn't a Jeep.
Exactly. So, but it was me, my nephew, the wife, and the 2 dogs. and it was a little cramped, but because again, 270-pound dogs. But the drive back, it was nice. It was fun to drive. I've driven the JK several times there and back, and
A little longer wheelbase helps the stability and the road tracking,
it was very nice. It was actually a very comfortable ride, and I don't get it. Maybe again, we'll get to the subject in a second, but everyone says how it's a dog and it's no power. I had plenty of power. I had the cruise control on going up through those mountains, and I'm not towing a 5,000-pound trailer, but that thing has more get up and go than the JK ever thought it could. And I didn't have any want for power. And again, things were great. It was actually a very comfortable ride. So driving the whole distance,
haven't changed it, and you haven't put bigger tires on it yet, and you haven't messed with the gearing without correcting the programming and all the other little things that lead to a lot of these snide comments from people.
I'll get there eventually.
Well, no, I'm not saying you should.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's kind of a neat feedback from you guys driving your new Gladiator the way Jeep shipped it out of the factory and putting it through what I would call the real life paces.
Yeah. And it was actually kind of fun and a rather enjoyable drive to have. But so far, without modding it yet, I like it. It actually performed admirable. Very, very. I couldn't be more pleased with it. I wouldn't drive there in the back of the LJ right now, especially with a blown rear shock with the shock bushings. But those are on order.
That's kind of like having a Morocco tied to the tail of a Chihuahua.
When I started driving, I was going to work similar. I'm like, here, clink, 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 clink. I'm like, oh, don't tell me the bumper's falling off. I'm like, okay, maybe it's my shackles I had back there. Clink, clink, clink. No, it's a different clank. All right, I'm hitting the tire carrier. That kind of clank. What? No, it's the one shock that I haven't replaced bushings or done anything with it because I'm like, it's
because
fine.
we did the front ones last time.
Yeah, and the right rear shock was replaced when the drunk driver hit me. So I grabbed the shock, say no, clank, 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 clank. Oh, there's my noise.
Upper or lower?
Both bushings are done.
Okay.
The top one squirted out. It was like halfway out. I'm like, oh man, I am not a fan of this company with red lettering.
Well, the shocks aren't too bad, but the bushings are cheap.
Yep.
That's one of the things with the some of the polyurethane bushings. Their durometer hardness is too firm, and they literally go out the side.
Yeah, it was
yeah, that and
so back to the meat of our subject because we really wanted to touch it, and it's actually in a way I'm kind of glad we didn't get a chance to jump on the bandwagon of everyone else releasing their thoughts, opinions, whatever. The one I see a lot of is we'll get to the whole meat. We'll dissect it, but the one thing I think is the most funniest comment I've ever seen on all the pages. This thing's a piece of junk.
Yeah, I like that.
It's not even out yet, guys. How do you know? Oh, moving on. I love the internet.
Well, that's the one thing you have to remember, that most everything you see on the internet
is true. Thank you, Abraham Lincoln.
Is opinion.
Yeah.
And everybody has one.
Yes.
And somewhere there's somebody that hates it. Yes, there are facts on the internet, but good luck picking them out of the opinion. And so I tend to be the cynic's cynic, when reading the internet. After all, if you believed all the internet, there should be nobody alive left in Florida right now.
Yeah.
We're the epicenter for the world.
Yes.
So
if you see that one meme we had I know I reference memes a lot. This is actually kind of funny. Is if you've seen Harry Potter, the Miss McGonagall goes, "Why is it when something happens, it's always you three?" And it shows Weasley, Hermione, and Harry sitting there. Underneath it said Florida, Texas, and California. It's like, why is it always you three when something happens?
We just got people.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'll be the first one to kind of shake my head at some of my peers here in Florida. And they are posting like crazy about going out to this party or going out to this Jeep social. And I'm like, guys, you're kind of missing the point here.
Yeah.
But, it's the United States of America.
Yeah.
We do have basic freedoms built in. And the freedom to be stupid is one of them, even though it's not written in the Constitution.
So, back to the Bronco.
Back to the Bronco. Well, there's some people that would say that that's freedom to be, but no, it's going to be interesting. I am looking forward to it, folks.
Absolutely.
I am not a brand snob when it comes to vehicles.
Correct.
I can't be. I've got a Honda, a Mercedes, a Jeep, a Ford, and a International.
Yeah, and a Kubota. Wait, is it Kubota?
No, it's not a Kubota. It's a Rural King.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I just realized. You realize I've got more diesels than I've got gas engines now.
You've only had two gas engines,
and all the rest are diesels.
and only one's naturally aspirated.
Correct.
Aspirated.
Yeah. And
One day I'll learn
that's
to
the
talk.
one it's 4-wheel drive though.
Well, speaking of
But Bronco. Back to the
yeah.
Bronco.
The thing that I thought was interesting is like I'm always someone would consider me an early adopter. Like when the JL came out, the 4-cylinder turbo.
Yep.
I think it's kind of a neat idea. I think the 4-cylinder turbo is a neat idea. But then you kind of made a comment that I started thinking about, going, he might be onto something, and that is a turbocharged motor in a dusty, dirty, wet, off-roading environment. And turbos need higher RPM and a gas.
RPM. They need clean air, scrubbed clean air.
Yes. So
and clean oil. That's the one most people forget.
yeah. So I know one of we could. This isn't going to be bore you to death with the same specs that everyone else has. I think they have the 4-cylinder EcoBoost motor. That's a turbo, and then they have the twin turbo. Is it the 2.7 V6?
I haven't dug in. It's whatever it is. It's
Yeah. So I'm looking at this going, okay, all right. And everyone kind of excited going, it's got a 7-speed transmission, 6-speed with a really low ratio crawl gear, 74-to-1 crawl ratio. I'm like, well, mine with the 4-to-1 in first gear with the 410 gears, I have 84-to-1.
Right. It sounds great to the uninitiated, but you realize that that's not the lowest crawl ratio. When you see the double box guys out there pulling in the upper hundreds to 1 to even 200-to-1 crawl ratio.
I may be a little off on those specs, so please don't email us saying I was wrong. You get the idea.
No, overall, I'm very interested to see the vehicle. And you can hate me if you want. I am not anti-Jeep. I'm very pro-Jeep. But I'll also remind you that Ford made a crap load of the first Jeeps.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, they were one of the larger manufacturers, along with Willys, of the flatties that we all love dearly.
Yeah. So that flat fender you're drooling over may have been made by Ford.
Yeah. Well, it may well have the Ford script in the back corner.
Yeah.
That's the only place you can really tell a difference. That and the serial number started with a different, and the purists would know it. I don't. But there's two different serial runs for the Ford manufactured and the Willys manufactured. No, I think competition's a good thing.
Yeah.
I really, really do. Jeep has been sitting on its laurels for decades now, all right, as the only game in town. Like, you had a little off-run from the Tacos and a little bit of a push from some of the Suzukis when they first came out with the off-roaders, and both of which are very good off-road vehicles, and all they really did was improve the Jeep.
Right.
And to that end, I love the timing of how quickly, Jeep announced something all of you who are listening have been screaming for. We can hear you here in Florida without the headsets on.
Yeah.
Ford comes out with their new Bronco, and the first thing Jeep pops out of their mouth is, oh, here's the new V8 powered
concept that's going to be probably put into production.
And, you wouldn't have gotten that V8 concept if it wasn't for Ford making it shot across the bow.
Right.
So competition is good. Second of all, to our sport in general, not everyone wants to go out in the hardcore, historically significant off-roader.
Okay, no one wants to have other kidneys turned to Slurpee.
That may be. That may be. And, if Ford brings a few more people into the off-road fold to help keep trails open,
yes.
Hey, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
I drive what I want to drive, and if it happens to be a Jeep, that's good for me and that's good for Jeep. But I'm not going to, turn my nose up if someone shows up in a new Bronco, and I'll walk over and look at it and crawl around. And in fact, I've already called the Ford dealership here in Brandon, Florida, where I had my truck special ordered, the Turbo Monster. And they're like, absolutely, you can come look at this thing as soon as we get one in, we'll send you a message.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go over there, and they're going to let me crawl under it and crawl around it. And, we might even set up and do an interview with the with the Ford dealership just to see what's new with this Bronco. Now, I do know it shares the same chassis as the Ranger pickup.
Right.
Okay. And so therefore, it's, if you've looked at their off-road, they have like a Ranger Sport or whatever it is. That's an off-road capable. It's going to share a lot of componentry there. The big horrible is it is going to come with IFS and rack and pinion steering, both of which are going to make it vastly superior to the Jeep on-road. But remains to be seen how it will survive off-road.
Yeah, me and you had a long discussion about steering, which may or may come up in a future episode. One of the things I thought was very interesting. Now, a friend of mine at work pointed this out, and they go, man, you can store the doors in the back, and the mirrors stay on when you take the doors off. Jeep didn't think of that. I'm like, yeah, for a reason. Number one, how many times have you been on a tight trail and had your mirrors stick out, or you laid your Jeep on the side, and all of a sudden you're holding a $300 piece of plastic that just broke?
Yep.
There's a reason why the mirrors come off with the door, and we buy those $35 cheap Smitty-built mirrors, because when they get crushed...
Or even the little motorcycle ones that fit in the hinge pocket.
Exactly. Or so when they get crushed by a tree, I'm out $10.
Yeah, and half the time you can bend them back into operation. Yeah, you got a spider view out there, about 6 different images, but...
Yeah, I like to think there's a multi-reflective curvature. This objects are broken in your mirror than you thought picture, okay?
Gotcha. So... I don't think the Ford from the images that have been presented is going to lend itself to the aftermarket quite as easily. Yes, some of the things. I'm sure there'll be a lift kit out before it's even released, because the pre-production models are already out.
They're already there. And SEMA, or the Broncos show 2021 in Nevada, it's going to be really cool next year.
So the Broncos show.
I ain't lying.
You ain't lying. I know. The Gladiator. It was the
Supra and Gladiator show last November.
But I'm interested to see it because it's going to challenge Jeep,
right?
And it's going to push them in the technological department. Because one of the things that Ford has is a dealership network that's going to put a hurting on the Jeep dealerships. Yeah. The Chrysler Jeep. And so that they're going to hit the advertising hard. They're going to really push it. But that's okay. If you love 7-slot grill, that isn't going to matter to you. No. Okay? And I don't really see the reason to cop an attitude, don't judge a vehicle by its body shell. I don't know.
There's so many parallels that can be drawn from that. Or like, don't judge a Bronco by the soccer mom driving it. Well, the two-door Bronco. One of the things I think is very interesting when you talk about the purists, is here's a really cool thing that, again, I looked on the Motor Trend website before we did the show, and the guy brought up a good point. Everyone goes out and buys the Sport Jeep bare bones roll down doors. Okay, you can get the Sport Jeep with an automatic transmission if you want it. But to get the 4-cylinder or to get the 6-speed transmission, it'll only come on that 4-cylinder model. You can't get it with the V6 twin turbo, and you can't get factory 35-inch tires with that same 4-cylinder turbo with the 6-speed. So your purist that go, well, they're building it and doing things that they want. Well, you got to read that fine print. If you want to buy the two-door Bronco and put 35s from factory, because some people don't want to, it's what they want. You're only going to get that 6-speed with the 4-cylinder.
Gotcha.
Is that going to be good enough for you?
And it may not. It may not. There's a lot to be said for it. This is a new vehicle.
That's not even out yet.
Yeah, it may have the what do I want to say, appearance of a Gen 1, a U100 is what I'm used to calling them, Bronco.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a completely new vehicle. And there's a lot new. On the other hand, Ford's going to have really done their homework. That they've researched and tested, and
they listen to their audience.
They do. That's how I was able to get, Big Red. I gave him a couple of white knuckles ones running to lunch today.
Running to lunch? Come on.
I wasn't walking.
You know what? I have to take that back. You showed me a video today about Draco. I'm going to call your truck Draco now.
no.
Big old motor and a small little airplane.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Get on one of those roads and you hammer down. I see flashing in sequential white lights on each side going off like a runway.
Let's just put it this way. I came out of a right turn onto a road.
Like a bush pilot.
And we were coming out, and an opportunity presented itself, and I went from 35 to 70 in about a quarter mile.
And I narfed my pants.
Yeah, if he did it, I couldn't tell, I'll be honest. But he did make a few exclamations.
It's a good thing I'm wearing my brown pants.
Did you really have to check before you said that?
A little bit, yeah.
Were they?
Those who Patreons looked at the video, know I know darn well I looked down to my left. Actually, they're kind of more of a, ooh, if this is the color that came out, I'm in trouble. I'm going to need to get brain probed and lose a third grade and figure out how to finger paint, because if this is the color that came out, I'm in trouble. I need to check my diet.
Oh, he's back to form, guys. He's back to form.
Dear God, this marshmallow fluff went bad. I am not going to edit that out.
Nor am I taking out of the video.
Or marshmallow narf. That's going to be the name of my Bronco when I buy it. Oh my God, Bronco waves. Have you seen those things? One guy had an OJ waving a knife. Look, it's the new Bronco wave. I'm like, oh, guys, come on. I love the internet.
I can tell that you do. I can tell that you do.
My Toyota's driven by terrorists. My Jeep won a war. My Bronco was driven by OJ. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, you know.
I love my listeners. Our listeners, excuse me.
But
It's been one of those days.
anyhow,
Yes.
I'm just going to say this way. You know, I'm not going to refuse to help a Bronco out of a mud pit if that's what happens, you know, and hopefully they wouldn't refuse to winch me out, because we're all part of the four-wheel drive and off-road community.
Yeah, because I mean, more and more people, you touched on it with more four-wheel drive owners, the more it's going to justify for off-road parks.
Yeah, we've got to work on that. And just as a segue off of that, our local Jeep community here has finally worked it out with our Fish and Wildlife Commission and Parks and Recreation to have one of our nature preserves. Huh?
I would say wheeling spots.
Well, yeah, it's a wheeling spot, but it's really, they've opened the fire roads up in a natural preserve area called Citrus, and normally you can wheel there as long as you stay on the open roads. There's a map published and printed out on the internet, but you know they don't want you to go and do. You can pick up trash, but you can't really do any maintenance because it is a fire road. And they don't want any people chainsawing trees because that's part of the environment type stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that kind of stuff, you have to coordinate it with them, and then they have an actual public work day that's set up, and you have to sign a release. So if you get hurt, it's not their problem. Right. You know, all the usual stuff. And there's a pretty good sized group that's been set up to go out. And Citrus is, I'm sad to say, guys, it's probably a 2 trail score.
Yeah.
But
it's a glorified dirt road with used to have some fun spots. It's since been bulldozed.
But they'll come back. They'll come back. It is a fire road.
Yeah.
And so we lost one of the, just off Trail 13 was one of the better climb spots and off camber situations. It was a good training spot for entry Jeepers. It wouldn't, you would have looked at it, anybody in Utah would have looked at it and go, God, my Walmart parking lot's worse than that. Yeah. And it probably is. But we don't try to tell you it's anything great. But when you've got somebody who just bought a Jeep for the first time and has never pulled that lever up into four-wheel drive, it's a perfect spot to make them feel what their Jeep can do. Yeah. Well, it's now a flat ramp.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that everyone got really upset about it. And actually, from what some people had said in past posts, so seeing pictures, it got gnarly there towards the end.
It did.
And so, again, gnarly in the 2 category.
Yeah, well.
But they can't get that fire truck up and down that road.
That they're going to blade it. Yeah. Now it was, and it will be back because there's a large drainage area up there that drains down that road and it cuts it. And what it makes or lacks in absolute terror in the fact that it is off camber, it is running down a wash. Our friends up in Georgia know what I'm talking about when I say coming down a mountain wash. But it's also soft, silty sand. So you're getting that wash on a rainy day.
Every day at 4 o'clock.
Every day at 4 o'clock. You can see I posted a video from several years ago when I was up there with Slightly Altered trying to climb, and all of us were just trying to climb that wash. Okay. We were in no danger of flipping as long as you didn't catch a wheel in the valley. You know, you could. I'm not saying you couldn't. You could if you tried.
It's actually on our intro video to our videos.
To our videos. But you see me in there with lockers engaged, all four wheels doing about 30 miles an hour, and you can hear the engine singing and tires and gears just winging away. And it was everything the Jeep had to get a claw hold on the top. And then it finally went up and over, and everybody's like, holy cow, somebody made it.
Exactly.
But I won't use a euphemism, but it was slicker than greased, you know what, you know.
Grease lightning.
Okay, we'll go with that. So Broncos, let's open and let's have a fair hearing. Let's see how they are. I have a feeling that the marketplace is going to tell Ford whether it was a good idea or not. And
it's going to, when it comes out of the gate, it's going to be swinging. But being in the dealership business like I am, everyone goes, soccer moms bought all the four-door Jeeps, blah, blah, blah. Well, some of those soccer moms that bought those four-door Jeeps are now women that are extremely capable that can outwheel almost 90% of the men that they encounter. I'm going to be willing to say 100% of the men they can encounter. We got Bonnie, you got Tanya from
Dana and
Dana,
all of those.
Everyone, Nomad Jeepers, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
You know, she's out there on 37s now and giving the trails the you-know-what.
Yep.
You know, because she bought her four-door mall crawler, mom Jeep, soccer mom Jeep. You know, so this is going to open up doors. But another thing, too, is that from a dealership side, I kind of worry because everyone thinks, you know, when you buy a four-wheel drive vehicle, you're introducing a new segment of people that don't understand that a warranty doesn't work like the fact of, you know, hey, you break it, we fix it.
Yeah.
You know, especially with IFS, you know, you're going to get people that buy the vehicles that don't understand the idea of tire noise on those mud tires because they bought the Bronco version of the Rubicon. But here's another good thing for all of us Jeepers out there that want the Broncos coming out. The people that jump to those new Broncos, there's a picture of, you know, the Ford dealership the day after the Broncos. It has all Jeeps in the parking lot.
The trade-ins.
There's going to be a plethora of used Jeeps that we can pick up on the cheap because prices will come down. They'll start offering rebates. You know, will our values hold as much? Who knows?
But I think it'll stabilize again.
It'll stabilize, but there's a lot of pluses to it. You know, we talked about, you know, the independent front suspension and, you know, people are kind of worried, well, since Ford did it, if it proves IFS is better, Jeep's going to do it because they have to eventually. Well, no, Jeep doesn't have to do anything they want. They may keep the solid axle longer because it is a selling point.
It's a selling point for those that want that simplicity, ease of modification. All you have to do, I can remember a very close parallel here, and this is just going to show my age, but I had I'm going to say an 86.
Mid-'80s.
Yeah, late 80s Toyota, before the Taco came out.
Hilux.
Yeah, that's what it was called, but not in the U.S. In the U.S., it was just a Toyota pickup.
Right.
And I got one of the first ones as IFS. You know, the year before mine, it was solid axle. And the world was telling me how horrible it was going to be. It was just not worth having. You know, you couldn't lift it. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do that. You know, the guys were showing, you know, all kinds of things before the internet, of course. But you'd go out to the local, you know, trails and that kind of stuff. And this was up in central Pennsylvania. And they'd show how easy they could just shackle lift or put re-arch springs in or that kind of stuff. And I can still remember... what was it? Downey Off-Road that used to do all these kinds of things like that and Toyota stuff. And then that first IFS lift kit came out and, oh my God, it took days to put on and pieces and parts. But you know what? IFS tacos are definitely out there and definitely strong runners any trail you've ever been on.
Right.
And the aftermarket addresses a lot of the weaknesses. So when I've seen these write-ups, you know, the rack and pinion steering, you know, those steering, what's the
tie rod ends?
Tie rod ends. Thanks. I've had them.
Well,
old man fart.
They are called tie rod ends in the steering gear, just in case we know tie rod end. You know, they are for the rack and pinion. They're so called tie rod ends.
But the tie rod ends on the rack and pinions are going to bend. Well, you know what? They bend. Guess what? you'll see them in the next Quadratech catalog. The upgraded tie rod ends for the new Ford Bronco. If that turns out to be a problem, the aftermarket will address it. I think it's just an opportunity for another following. And you know what? Let's face it. Rivalries can be fun. They don't have to be violent. So you're going to be out on the trail and you're going to be like, all right, hey, Joey, you got that new Bronco. You go see if you can make that hill on the same time that Billy did. Billy just did it in his Wrangler. And so, okay. And you guys will get into it on each other, but at the end of the day, you'll all go back. And once you've parked and turned your car, your truck, your Jeeps, whatever, etc., off.
Loser buys a pizza.
And loser buys the pizza or the beer.
Exactly.
Just don't drive and drink.
Well, one of the things that we touched on too is that the IFS and one of the comments I said was, well, King of Hammers run IFS and it's strong and durable, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, pump the brakes there, Hannity. You realize that the IFS systems are using in King of Hammers. I'm going to let the engineer take this over because all I know is that I see big bank and money used in those things that aren't used to get groceries. So Kevin, you take this part.
Well, let's start off with KOH. Awesome rigs, no two ways about it. But almost every one of them are custom built. The engine doesn't play an issue because it's pushed back. Sometimes it's mid-engine.
Yeah.
Look at where that front IFS is. It's all the way in front of the vehicle. It's the very first thing. There's no bumper. There's just the front IFS mounts.
It crosses the line 3 minutes for the rest of the truck does.
Correct. And so, IFS needs long swing arms to be effective. That's why, most cars and other small vehicles that use ISF have maybe 12-inch, some as low as 8-inch, maybe up to 18-inch long arms. You don't get much of an arc swing with that small of an arm. You look at the King of Hammers, they pulled the mounts all the way in almost to the vehicle center line.
Exactly.
So that you
got literally just the size of a differential.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. And they've worked it where they don't care about your driveline feed to that. So your engines, half of them are dry sump, so you don't have an oil pan you're fighting with, or they put it behind you to keep the weight back so that you roll perfectly when you flip down the mountainside.
Sky dirt, sky dirt, sky dirt, sky dirt.
But so yeah, IFS works really, really well if it's really engineered to your specific requirement.
For 6 minutes.
For 6 minutes, and you may not have to worry about things like creature comforts, air conditioning, cup holders, and stereo.
You talked about it earlier. You remember those big dog houses in the vans,
Yes. Yeah, go back to the days of the Ford Econoline vans that had, you sat all the way over against the door, and as everybody said, you were the first person on any accident scene, following right behind your headlight bucket.
Exactly.
Which usually ended up in your crotch.
What was it? What's the last thing to go through your mind in an accident in the van? The taillight?
No, usually it's just the person behind you.
Wear your seatbelt, kids.
But no, I'm interested. I'm very, very interested, and I am more interested for the same reason with the Ford as with the JKs and JKUs and LJs. Is Jeep struggled with the 6. Let's be honest. Your 3.8 didn't exactly start off life as a shining off-road power plant. No. It was okay for motivating mom and 13 kids in a minivan going down to Walmart or the grocery store.
Yeah.
But it was lackluster in, let's face it, the number we need in the off-road environment is torque. Not horsepower. I don't really care what my horsepower is, okay? Yeah. That's about top-end speed, and my brick will not even fall as fast as some cars can idle. But we need torque. That's what motivates us. That's what turns wheels and gets us up hills, over rocks, through water, which has a very high frontal resistance if you haven't figured that out. They always talk about an inch of water can pick up a 3,000-pound car and move it away.
Right.
And we want to drive through 3 feet of it at 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That takes torque.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, how did Jeep handle it? They had to shift motors from the 3.8 to the 3.6 and then play some games with the rear end gears and play some games with the transmission.
They're 2 different transmission styles.
And it's still a little lackluster. You mentioned it, taking your Gladiator on the run it's a great vehicle, but those were highway,
Well, again, the 410 gears with the 8-speed transmission with that motor at 280 horsepower, You mash the right skinny pedal, and maybe mine's different than everyone else's, but I get thrown in the back of the seat, and it's scary sometimes.
Well, and how long since your first, that was from '07 was when the first 3.6 came out, and now it's 2020.
Yeah.
So that's 8 years to get it right.
Yeah.
So let's see what Ford comes up with. I'm very interested to see what Ford comes up with, because one of the things Ford does have in their stable is a very strong background in diesel, and they've made some massive mistakes and learned from
What,
them.
the 6.4? Come on.
The 6.0 is what I'm thinking of.
Well, the 6.4 was worse because it was the same engine bored out and shattered crankshafts.
Yes. So, yeah, but at least they claim that they didn't design and build it. They just took somebody else's and modified it.
Cough.
Yes. Here, help me pick up these cracked 6.0 heads that I had sitting in the back.
Well,
but, I'm very interested to see how Ford has taken on the torque numbers. I know that Chrysler is part of, the Dodge Chrysler network and the Cummins, but they didn't go, they didn't look into Cummins for the Jeeps, which surprised me because Cummins has that beautiful little V6, torquey little V6.
The 2.8 V6 they came out with, the crate motor.
Crate motor.
But they even use that Cummins diesel. It's the V6. No, is it the Cummins diesel D8? I think it's a V8 in the Titans.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. But, and I know what the reasoning is it costs money to bring in somebody else's power plant.
But yet they did it with that Vermuri, or I can't pronounce the name. It's a 3.0 Eco Diesel they had in the Grand Cherokees and the Ram.
Oh, yeah.
It's a variant of that, or maybe the same engine. I don't know. We talked about it a couple shows ago.
Yeah.
But again, that's getting pushed to the front now for the Gladiators and everything else.
It is. So, this is going to be one of those things but Ford coming in with their history of the F-Series trucks and that power plant, and I've noticed that in some of the F-150s, they're doing the little 6 diesel.
Yes.
So it hadn't gotten down to the Ranger level, but I see that coming sooner than later, and that could be a real challenge to the Jeep.
Well, one of the things that I saw actually this morning when I was doing my morning scroll is they're talking about like they're fast tracking a Bronco pickup. Now, again, some of this stuff I haven't checked Snopes to see if it's real yet.
You call that a front end on a Ranger?
Yeah, but it's like, but that's my whole point. Is like I'm like, okay, so they gave up on the Ranger that fast? I mean, it didn't make any sense to have the same truck twice.
Oh no, but if it's that easy for them to do it. They're already saying that the basic frame is the Ranger frame.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously tweaked and modified somewhat. But if it's that close, is the A-pillar line the same? Can you just do fenders, hood, and grill and call it a Bronco? Well, then they might just do that to see what the market is. If it doesn't take a major investment, you're only talking about the front end. I mean, let's face it, Chrysler themselves wrote that book. When you had the Dart and the what was the I can't even remember all of them. God, I'm getting old here, but you could go and everybody's rig. But Chrysler used to put the Dodge Dart nose, the Plymouth Challenger nose, or the Duster. That was it. The Duster, the Dart, and they were all they were even the fenders were the same and the hoods were the same. It was just the very nose sheet metal changed and the badge changed and.
Gotcha.
There you go. It's a different car.
Yeah, AM's the Duster, the Dart, and but I was thinking Scamp. They were like, wait a minute, wasn't this?
That was a submodel. The Scamp of the
Duster. The AMC Ramblers. What I was thinking for a second.
The Ramblers.
But I love those little cars.
Yeah, well, they ramble along. You could run them out of oil and they'd still go.
No. That is the Slant 6, the 225 Slant 6.
I remember the Slant 6. I did an in-frame rebuild on one.
Let me tell you something. Next to the 4.0 liter, that's a motor that also cannot be killed.
That's what I mean.
Exactly.
If you spit in its general direction, it's like, oh, that's okay. That's enough lubrication. I keep running.
Exactly.
What's the bearing tolerance? Plus or minus a quarter inch.
It's like, it rattles like you wouldn't believe, but man, it will not stop.
Yeah. Well, the standing joke is the engine was so rough. That's the reason they put it at an angle so it wouldn't make the suspension bounce up and down.
My first
I
car.
had several of those, folks.
Well, my first car, I always wanted a 72 Dodge Dart. That flying buttress back window and all that. Like, oh man, I wanted one of those so bad. I pleaded with my mom, let me be that first car. So when I brought home my Volkswagen Rabbit, I was I was sadly disappointed.
You were in a bunny box.
I was in the bunny box, yeah.
Now,
Good
see,
old tan
I was the
sand
other way.
color.
At 16, I was begging my parents for a Christmas present. Was a CJ5.
Yeah.
And, gee, I was disappointed. A 5 or a 7. I'd even take a 7, you know. And, guys, that was back when those were new. And I remember looking out, you know, Christmas morning out into the driveway and being utterly disappointed. And my mom later letting me know that they had seen the not consumer reports, but whoever it was.
Stupid Ralph Nader.
Yeah, Nader's report and how they rolled over too easy. And okay, you know, I wouldn't do that. I would. I flipped a few
Fast
things.
forward 15 years later, you told me the story about you rolling the flat fender down a mountain.
Yeah, well, minor details.
Dude, you can roll a big wheel if you try hard enough, okay? And don't ask me how I know. It's how I got that scar, and that's as far as we're going with this conversation.
So, anyhow, back to the still wandering topic of the Ford Bronco, the new Bronco. I'm interested. I'm not going to buy one. I am very, very happy with Slightly Altered because it was built about 60% by Mercedes Jeep.
Yeah.
And about 40% with these two hands and a lot of cussing and swearing. And I'm still very happy with it, even when the side steps don't work.
Hey, I'll rent a Bronco and take it out to Citrus or Hard Rock. Yeehaw!
That's not much of a test, but okay, we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
Hitting anything at speed would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, let's be honest. You can't speed down there. But no, again, my biggest, not really complaint is that, you know, again, everyone's melting down in the Jeep world. And I'm like, guys, it's not even out yet. You know, just
What's the point of melting down?
yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's going to eventually, at some point, lead to good things for Jeep.
I was going to say, sooner or later, you'll be on a trail where the trail lead is a Bronco.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
Well,
you know, and it's not the bad thing. It's not a horrible thing. You're both going to buy your parts at Napa or O'Reilly's or AutoZone or one of them.
This is like a resurgence from the 70s, the horsepower wars, you know?
Well, you know, there's a good point there, Scott. That just might be.
It's like an off-road wars, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, and what we're going to see before too much longer is we're going to see Finnegan out there, you know, with a new Jeep and a new Bronco.
Who?
Oh, come on. You haven't been paying attention to Roadkill?
No.
Guys, I don't know what
you
to
guys
do
remember,
with it.
I
What
don't
do
watch
do
TV.
with
I
them?
don't watch TV. If it's not
YouTube
Archer,
now,
Brickleberry, Paradise PD, or G.I. Joe on YouTube, I don't watch it.
All right. Well, Finnegan's Garage is, you know, an offshoot from the off-roader, four-wheel off-road, four-wheel drive. He was the editor, and he's known for doing crazy things, and he builds wild cars. He took a motorhome, ripped the big block out of an very old motorhome, and then plopped it into, I'm going to say, a Cuda, you know, or something like that, and a 70s, you know, and went out and ran it with off-road tires in the desert. You know?
Sweet.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's also the one who made, I can't remember the name of they took a semi-truck and shortened it and then put it overpowered so it would do wheelies.
Pasco.
Yeah.
Pasco, Florida.
Yeah, so, but, you know, he'll be out there, I guarantee you, sooner or later in Roadkill TV doing some wild things to demo them, if he can get somebody to underwrite buying them. It's going to be interesting. I'm not, like I said, I'm not brand snobbish. I know what I like, and I know what capabilities make me happy, but it'll be interesting to see what the Bronco brings to the table.
Yeah. Again, like I said, more people brings more money, and so
more
on and so forth.
demand on the politicians to open trails.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you know, for us going out there and doing trail cleanup on the 8th of August up in Citrus, you know, it wouldn't hurt to have a few more people that have something to carry garbage off.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we named the show On the Trail. One, to avoid legal cease and desist from a certain company.
Yeah.
But also, too, we want the ability to talk about other topics and stuff like that. But, you know, let us know your opinions on this, you know. I mean,
do you feel threatened by the Bronco, or do you welcome them, or Do you think it's a bad idea by Ford, or do you think it's something neat? I mean, we'd like to know what you guys think about it.
Yeah, on the trail podcast at gmail.com. But I think we've beaten this dead horse enough. Okay, sorry. That one. Oh, man, I'm sorry. Kevin's looking at me going, nay, that joke just didn't do it.
I'm going to put you out in the manure pile at this rate.
Easy there. Whip me with the tail. But speaking of which, I can't segue from that. That's awkward. A very special thanks to all of our Patreons.
Yes.
Again, you keep the lights on. Again, Market Wrangler Fix, he's one of our Patreons.
You've got his cup here.
I got
those that
you
are
have
watching.
your cup too. We both cups, yes. So, but again, if there's anything you guys want to hear about show topics, I think one of the next topics we're going to cover is probably going to be steering. The difference between full assist, regular hydro, stuff like that. Unless you want to cover it now, Kevin. I mean, it's almost been an hour.
No, we're good. We're good. Yeah. We'll save something for the next show. We didn't even get to the garage this time, and I'll just say we were in the garage all morning,
yes.
which is probably why, because the passenger step quit again.
Now, yeah, we can talk about it. We'll end the garage.
Short. It's very, very simple. Go ahead, open the door then. Let's go into the right spot.
Is it up, down, down, left, right, circle A, select B, start again? I said it online. Okay.
Give me the button.
Yeah, okay. All right, there's a door open. Man, it rained while we were here, and man, it is absolutely, you cut with us. You know what, guys, we're still inside. Moving on. How can I help you?
Well, when we were in the garage, folks, the little dial with a pointer on the wall said 97. And the RH was probably very close to the same number because water started falling from the sky. Fortunately, we were undercover. Yeah. Passenger step acted up again. And this time, Scott wanted to come over and help, and I welcome that help because having somebody there to talk out loud with as you're diagnosing, and it forces you to think. And this is why it's a great topic. This is about chasing any problem. We often tend to start ripping and throwing and doing things because we know, we've done this 1,000 times. But when you
said that earlier,
when you're explaining it to someone and going, and Scott's very good at this, and this is not negative, Scott, but you're very quick to ask, well, why are you doing that? Or what are you looking for? How come you're doing it this way? How come you're doing it that way? It makes me stop and think. And that is a real benefit to going through all of the options. So we move the Jeep into position. I actually have a DeWalt chop saw. Best way to think of it is a sawhorse, an aluminum sawhorse thing that the saw clips to that gives you a real nice workstation. But it works really well for working on power steps.
It does. I actually got a picture of it.
Yeah, it goes together quickly, 2 C-clamps, and the step is now secured in the same orientation that it would operate in. So you can actually use a power probe to operate the steps. So I would take it off, and I'd explain what I was doing, and we got it up, and we clamped it up there, and then we tested it with the power probe, and it still was just, nothing. And we talked through as I disconnected a linkage and then tested and disconnected this linkage.
Starting from the outside, going in.
Yeah, basically going from the furthest back load, which is the step itself, and disconnected that. Now there was nothing on the motor. It still wasn't moving. Okay, we know it's not the step linkage.
Is it the wiring to the motor?
Yeah, so I changed out the wiring to the motor. I had a spare harness. Nope, no difference. And we just kept one piece at a time. Okay, let's take this out of the equation. Let's take that out of the equation. And this applies to anything you're working on that you have a symptom with no smoking gun.
Right.
All we knew was the motor wasn't turning. Okay. And it's a new motor. Well, relatively speaking, it's probably 1.5 years old since I've replaced it. And the funny thing is I had torn apart the old motor, and the only reason I didn't reuse the old motor was it actually had a bent shaft. Okay, the electric motor, the worm drive, and all this. And for those of you who have any idea what I'm talking about, these are the power window actuator motors out of any large Ford truck or car. They're just a 90-degree worm gear drive system. And if the worm gear shaft gets bent, obviously it will bind and then be loose and then bind and be loose. And if the bind happens to line up when you have the load of the step being closed, there's not enough torque in the motor to unscrew it.
Right, yeah.
It's just like a seized screw. So we get down to the point where I actually took everything off the motor, okay, the drive assembly, and had actually pulled the mounting frame and motor out, and it still didn't work. And we took the 3 screws out of the frame and lifted and at that point, it spun to life, like nothing was wrong.
Yeah, probably tapping when we pulled it out.
Oh, that's right. When I tapped
him.
You were asking about tapping, and I tapped on the motor housing, which is a little, let's say, 2-inch tube section of it in metal.
Yeah.
The rest is all plastic. And lo and behold, it started moving. And I probably could have put it back together and probably would have worked fine for another month or two until it just hit that one spot where the motor torque was insufficient to get the thing moving again. I then pulled the whole drive motor assembly apart. Because of the way a worm gear works, I'm not going to go into technical details, but every time you use it, the worm motor, the shaft of the worm screw either thrusts away from the motor or into the motor. Very hard. That's where the force comes from. And I could see discoloration in the motor housing that was a little suspect, like it may had some corrosion or something like that. We opened it up. I pulled the armature out, and lo and behold, in the bottom of the motor housing, which is just a little metal case with the magnets in it, I could see that there was grease on the sleeve bearing.
Right.
But there was no grease down in the bottom of the bucket where the ends of the shafts are ball-shaped, and that's their thrust point. And there was no grease down there. And so I did get some synthetic, grease that I have a very little pancake of that works for motors. It's a dielectric grease, but it's a high pressure grease, and it doesn't creep and get into motor electricals and cause fires. And we went through and I lubed. Now, this is one of those little frustrating things. There was nothing smoking gun other than tap the case and it worked. That immediately makes me think, okay, is the armature rubbing against the stator magnets? There was nary a mark on the stator magnets.
Right.
It was something in operational bind. And so, and this system puts a fairly heavy thrust on that motor, but no worse than raising up a window when it hits the window seals at the top of the run.
Right.
But there may be less gear reduction between the two, okay? Because a window crank uses a small, like 6 or 8 tooth gear, and the pantograph mechanism, if you think how large the teeth are on a window opener, that would, if it was a circle, it might be a 12-inch radius circle. It's only a pie wedge of it. So I don't know. I really don't know, because my driver's side has never failed, but the passenger side has been a little bit problematic.
Right. But it doesn't get used as much.
It does nowhere near. I mean, 1/10 as much. I need to start just reaching over and opening the passenger door, which I can do in a TJ. So we cleaned it up, and I did lubricate all the way down with a Q-tip down into the bearings so that the ball end, which is where it bears the pressure, was properly lubricated. And, then put the whole thing back together, checking each step. And it's like I said, this was because Scott was there asking questions. And so rather than making assumptions that we all have a want to do, particularly if you've done this many times, you tend to run through steps because, I've done that. I know it can't be that. Well, that's maybe not the greatest strategy. And we went through that. And so I assembled the motor, but I didn't put the driven gear in. And we tested it. And lo and behold, it spun way smoother than it ever did before.
Right.
It was, and then I showed him how the gear works, and we reseated the drive gears. It made me slow down and do things in a very proper, methodical order. And when we were done, that thing was running smoother, even when I got it back into the step. And then we loaded it all down, and I did have to put some new hardware in because they use a rather soft grade of stainless steel in some of the nuts and bolts, which is great for corrosion. But if you guys have ever worked with 304 or 316 stainless, you'll know that
you look at it wrong.
It can, and the fittings were they were hex drives, and they were getting a little round. They weren't going to survive much more. So, and I got to give a shout out to the Riverview, Florida Ace Hardware on Highway 301. Guys, I've been to a lot of hardware stores, Ace included, that had some pretty neat stacks of specialty hardware. This store manager, I don't know his name. I hope to meet him someday. This guy must be either a car junkie or an off-roader. This guy has every one of those little trays and boxes you ever seen, an entire aisle length.
Both sides.
Both sides and the end cap. Because remember on the end cap, there's all the polished chrome and blacked out versions. The man had the shouldered sleeves that fit in the tiny little hardware within that lift assembly that on the pivot pins. And I'm going,
How?
Okay, I'm not going to argue. You know, they needed trimming because they were for thicker metal, but I don't care. I've got a belt sander. There we are. They fit perfect now.
Pretty much.
And hardware. Okay, I need a 1024 countersunk Allen head stainless steel 3/4 inch long bolt.
29 cents a piece and a whole box of them.
So I was just every time I go in there looking, you probably don't have this, but and they're like, yeah. And when you looked up, and they had just added an entire half a row section of new boxes.
Well, I went to the Ace Hardware when I took off my transfer case lift, and I had a 16 feet section of bolts, and that was it on one side of the aisle.
Right.
And I'm like, I walked down this aisle, I'm like, man, you're just much better than mine.
These guys are just incredible. So my shout out to them for specialty goods when you need them. And I don't care. I'm sure that the bolts you were saying 29 cents a piece probably cost 2.5 cents to make. I don't care. When you need them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and they weren't $7 a piece at the dealership.
Yeah. So, but we did get it all back together. The step is operating flawlessly again. What I did confirm with it by walking slowly through with Scott was all the problems have been internal to the motors, not the mechanism of the step itself.
Yeah.
And these are repurposed motors. They should be strong enough for this usage, but like many things, if they're not cycled, they're going to tend to seize up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to probably start trying to make it a habit to either reach over. Well, all I got to do is flip the little blue switch in the dash, and they'll both cycle.
Oh.
As a reset.
Hey,
and
a pre-flap checklist.
You got it. I was telling Scott it was funny because I park my Jeep very close to one side of my garage, because my wife gets the rest of the garage. She takes her half a little more to the middle. And besides, my Jeep's repairable. The Mercedes is kind of expensive to do that with, but that's Mama's toy.
And the Jeep is also armored.
Yeah, the Jeep has got some armor on it. But anyway, and I had been testing it that way. I didn't realize I was also testing the safety stop because it was opening and slamming into the storage shelves every time I did it. So I'm going to have to wait till I'm actually driving out and get out clear of the garage to flip the cycle switch.
Do a flap check, a pre-flight flap check.
That's not a bad idea. I just need to remember to do that, to just keep that moving so that what it is.
No. Instead of having the sticker, remember, stupid, you have to drive this home. Remember, Kevin, you have to do a pre-flap checklist.
Yeah. So I guess where I'm going with this garage segment is twofold. One thing, operable equipment needs to operate. If you have a situation like I do where you've got something that stows against bumpers, it pulls up and the motor has to hold it in a position closed. The interesting thing is down, there's no load on the motor. Right. Because gravity is holding it down, but it's got to hold it up against gravity. And even though it's got a ram to help counterbalance it, there's constant pressure. That in itself, if you don't use it, will eventually force the grease away from that contact point. And then a couple of uses later, you got no grease under the ball tip, and it doesn't want to turn anymore.
Yeah, because it's too much friction.
Correct, it's too much friction. And so, the fact that mine isn't operating is probably the cause, not a design defect. It's a usage defect.
You don't use it, you lose it.
You lose it. Second thing was, if you got somebody who's willing to come and hang around with you, they don't have to be God's gift to mechanics, okay? Yeah, you don't want them to lick their fingers and stick it in an outlet, all right? Or see if the air chuck will blow through their ear and come out the other side. That might be a little much of an interruption.
Hold the flashlight, and all of a sudden you see the light on the wall.
But anything that makes you stop, think, and explain, it's funny how explaining it to others, you're explaining it to yourself, and makes you do a better job.
Well, on that note, Kevin and Scott are available for parties and bar mitzvahs and your own Jeep things that you have. Available at $238 an hour for us to sit there and you can talk through your builds and issues with us.
Where
We're glad.
did
I
that
have
come
no
from?
idea.
Proceeding
We're-
was sarcasm, folks.
Yes, I'm joking. But if you do have a technical question, though, by all
Sure.
means,
By
feel
all
free.
means, I'll do my best. I've popped a few bubbles, unfortunately, recently with people that had these
Grandiose ideas.
Well, they weren't grandiose. They were neat ideas, but like the one gentleman, great guy, had listened to the show where I talked about hot wiring the TJ dashboard, and he thought it was just a simple, isn't it just to connect the light? And no, it's actually kind of faking out the body control module to turn on the locker lights and to set the alarms. Not particularly hard to do, other than knowing how to do it. And admittedly, he said, I think that's a little more than I want to handle. And, I can respect that. That is, that's awesome.
That's a reason why you pay people sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's just worth paying people. But I haven't seen anybody come out with a kit for, hooking up your aftermarket lockers to the TJ dashboard.
Yeah.
Because that's only for, I believe, 4, 5, and 6. You know. So anyway, folks, we've run on a bit long here, but this is kind of 2 shows jammed into one show since we kind of cheated last time. We do appreciate everybody who sent us, hey, are you guys okay? Is everything fine? How are you guys doing? Is the pandemic got you? No, there's no pictures of Scott or I on ventilators anywhere. Maybe with a welding gas, something like that. No, just kidding. It was just one of those prudent situations where we both found ourselves in what they call at-risk situations. Yeah. And to protect ourselves and our families, it was deemed best to self-quarantine and or not self-test, but test. Yeah. Fortunately, both turned out to be false alarms. Yep. Which is a blessing.
Which is good. My IQ test came back negative.
He just can't let it get serious at all, can he?
Nope.
But we do appreciate all the well-wishers, and we are healthy and well, other than sitting here trying to, breathe pollen instead of oxygen.
Say healthy? Yes. Well, mentally, I'm a little cuckoo. Narf.
Great. Now we owe Steven Spielberg.
Fine. Snarf. Maybe they're the long-lost cousins. Could you imagine the Snarf cat from Thundercats chasing Narf the mouse? Nerf, Snurf, Nerf, Snurf, and a Smurf watching. Oh, my
Pinky,
God.
you
I
mean the
think I
mouse?
just started a universal collapsing on itself. I said Narf, Snarf, and Smurf. Oh, my God. Dude, that would be an awesome, awesome lawyer, legal team. This message brought to you by the legal team of Narf, Snarf, and Smurf.
Counter-arguments by Dewey, Cheatham, and How.
Yes. So on that note, I can hear people asking the refunds on a free podcast. I think it's time that we, hit the old trail, lock hubs.
Well, let's close the garage door.
I don't want to.
Lock hubs. Put the Jeep in 4-wheel drive. And go out and find a trail somewhere. I need a trail.
We need a trail.
But it's got to be 6 foot away from any other trail. I don't want to have anything. I need some kind of face mask over the front of the Jeep. Oh, I've got to make sure the air cleaner has a mask on because I can't. Oh, God. I'll have to do that on the 8th. I'm going to have to put one of the gators over the snorkel. See, Scott is infectious.
Patreons are getting an extra special show today. Wink. Okay, so on that note.
Yeah. Can you say slap happy?
Exactly. I said, wait, lap slappy? I have no idea. Well, that doesn't. Moving on. Thanks, Mark from Wrangler Fix. Have a great day, guys. You folks have a wonderful time. So as we always say, make sure to take your nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash
when you leave the trail. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Patreons.
Yep.
Until 2 weeks from now with the next show.
On August 15th.
Yep, and we'll probably talk a little bit about the cleanup.
Sounds good.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.